For immigrants, a flag can represent sacrifice, exile, opportunity, or even contradiction, and a whole load of other emotional challenges that we carry with us when we leave our home world and displace ourselves into the new world. But what does it mean to build a life under another flag? And you guys might be asking yourselves that, why are we talking about this? This is silly. Flags are for kids. Flags are the things that we draw and we color and we learn in school and geography. But in this episode, what does it mean to build a life under another flag? Hello and welcome back to Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ. And today we will be evaluating and analyzing the history of flags and link it to what it means psychologically to live under one flag, but also carrying another in our hearts as immigrants. So we decided today to bring back Haitham, as he is the flag expert and I am a student of history. So I couldn't think of anybody else that can answer a lot of the questions that I have about flags. I love reading about wars and kingdoms and empires, even colonial, as much as it has such a bitter and sour taste in our mouth. The colonial era is fascinating because literally back then, what I learned is to conquer is to stick your flag and claim that land. And then you can build whatever borders you think they are beneficial economically for you, and to build rules, regulations, and laws just with the flag. That's how powerful it is. But I would like to take an extra step on that thought and say that as immigrants, we honor our flag. We honor our heritage that created the flag. It is a symbol of unity. It is a symbol of identity. But when we displace ourselves, either by design or by default, we need to master an unlimited mindset that we are going to exile ourselves and sacrifice for a better life and follow certain rules and new laws in the new world that is under that new flag. So let's jump into it. And thank you, Haitham, for coming on again. I am so excited because I got a lot of questions for you. So what I would like to do is to start with my first question. I like to start from the beginning. One of my strengths is to really reflect on the past, and that's how I learn and process the world and around me and understand why things are happening the way they're happening around me. So let's start all the way back in history and ask this. When did humans first begin using flags, and what purpose did they originally serve the flags?
Yeah, so thank you again for having me. And one thing that some people don't realize is the study of flags is called vexillology. So it's an odd word for it, but there's kind of a reason, and that term goes back to actually the 1960s, 1970s. But the first, we could say, proto flag, or the idea of it seems like it goes back to ancient Egypt with what they call vexilloids that they now coin. And before people used cloth, some symbols that were used were on wood or animal skin. Sometimes feathers would have been used, and the main people that used it were generally kings in these regions. Egyptians, especially in Egypt. And later on, it went from just royalty to military related. That, before there were banners, sometimes it was a staff. So staffs are a little older, and maybe they had feathers or hairs on it, or another type of metal showing a symbol or carving. So that way troops can rally behind it, or this is a marker of where they should station themselves. So that's a proto flag, but the first time we really see cloth being used is in China. Actually, this is, maybe we'll say 3,000 years ago. The reason China is a big one is because this is where silk was invented. So your first big form of cloth being used was silk, with China being very known for that. And then the idea of this cloth later spread to north to Mongolia, and later to Persia and Mesopotamia. And of course, later on, you get to parts of Europe, especially Rome.
Wow. Okay. I have so many questions. There's so much data. I love it. So what you're saying, just to clarify, flags were only used by kings first, right?
Yes.
Then military.
Yes, then military and officers, and especially if you had chariots, they would have all these little signifiers. And so they were really just symbols to rally behind before necessarily they were a symbol of a nation or a people. It was really a symbol of who I follow.
Okay, so it's a leadership symbol.
Yes.
So I'm the leader, and if you pledge to that flag of the king, then you are supporting that king's policy,
yes,
methodology, ideology, so forth and so on. That's amazing. So when silk was discovered or created in China, so before it was just pieces, you said stone or metal. So
wood, or wood, staffs of metal, and sometimes fur or feathers.
Fur or feathers. Wow.
Yes.
That must have been gorgeous. I love that.
It was, yeah.
Must have been beautiful. I wonder if they did, was there any tatreez, like the stitchings?
So from what I know is in some parts, yes, there was different eras though. I think maybe more embroidery would be a little bit later, after just having like the hide or the skin of an animal, and later silk. But yes, embroidery has appeared, and I believe there's examples of this in the Americas, especially around the Incan Empire areas in South America. So that's where you had maybe little square patterns or checkerboard patterns with different colors.
Do you think the idea of having like this is my plate, right? So it's just a symbol of plate. Is it because the whole tribal concept of humanity, how like I belong to this tribe, I belong to that tribe? I'll tell you a story why I'm asking this.
Okay.
Is my grandmother, جدتي حليمة, my maternal grandmother, من قبيلة العزب, from the Azab tribe, Basalt. So what they did is when the girl hit all the girls of the tribes, remember tribes, the Bedouin tribes, they own, it's all about the land, and all about the sheep herd, and all about, because that's a source of food, and it's all about the well that they control, which is the water source. Okay, so we have the land, so they grow stuff, and then you have the sheep that produces stuff, and then you have the water. So anybody that there were no borders, right? Anybody that crosses the territory, or doesn't belong here, or somebody's not familiar, they don't know anything about, you get in trouble, right? And that's where the tribal wars were. Really, that's all it is. So in Al-Azab tribe and all the tribes of Jordan, according to my understanding, when the girl hit maturity, they will tattoo every single girl Very small, subtle tattoo. The forehead, next to the eye, the cheek, and the chin.
Mhm.
And the reason why, in case that girl got stolen, kidnapped, wandered around, got lost, because again, you have to, being in the desert or as a tribe, you learn your landmarks. There was no technology to know where you're going. So if you happen to herd, your sheep and you get lost and somebody finds you, they know the mark. They know that my grandmother belonged to Al-Azab tribe, and then they have the responsibility and the duty to take her back to her tribe safe and sound. So I'm telling this story because it sounds to me, the way you explain the history of flags, it's all about tribal, which group you belong to, just like the political parties we have these days, right? Like United States, the Democrats and, and the Republicans, right? You have the elephant and the donkey. You know exactly which group that you belong to. They have their own flag. I mean, these are basically their own flags. They're not banners, flying day in and day out, 24 hours. But we recognize that's how we learn the parties, or you guys learn the parties in school. So, do you think, just from somebody that looks into history so much and you know so much about it, do you think that's where possibly originated from, the whole tribal connection?
I think there is an element of that. I think, in the early days, it was more, I would say it was more, like element of power in a sense, before it would, because, certain tribes at that point, as they form a confederation under a leader, and it's really, focused on the leader. So, for example, like a Bedouin tribe would be the sheikh or the chief. So you would rally behind that leader, and thus, because now you have a commonality, you have a union, and of course you have a symbol with it. I would say also later on you would start to see religious symbols being added to it. So, the cross, for example, was used a lot, especially with the adoption of Christianity by Rome under Emperor Justinian, let's say. So, and later on, you would see different groups using the sword of cross, but later, let's say with the rise of Islam and the caliphates, such as the Umayyad and the Abbasid, now it can also dictate what we call the ummah, or the nation. But when we say nation, not necessarily state in a sense, or nation state, where to them the unity was through the religion of Islam, but because they don't show icons, they had a white banner, let's say for the Umayyads, or a black banner for the Abbasids. So it was just having this significant banner of different colors as a signifier of, oh, this is the power that's growing. But also having religious inscriptions as well added to the unity, the chants that they would have. So even outside of just tribal, another layer of even religion was the next one to unite a nation, in a sense.
So that's exactly, I think, my next point that I wanted to ask you. According to what you just said, approximately how did early, like, military or tribal banners evolve into the modern flag? Like, how early did that? I know you mentioned it went from different material, like metal, fur, feathers, and then cloth with the discovery or the production is silk in China. But how did that go into coming from, it sounds like it's the East, but I know the Vikings also, they had banners, but those were cloth banners, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually the first Europeans to really use flags kind of the way we think of flags was the Vikings, actually. So of course there were like little banners and parchments, but I guess closer to a civilizational or just just having a flag, let's say, on a ship. So that's the next aspect, is ships. Ships changed flags, and flags changed ships as well. And so the Vikings were especially known for their huge ships, especially if you go to any museum in Sweden, let's say, or Norway. So with, I think a lot of things changed by, let's say, the 8th century, and that, having more banners that you saw with colors and especially religious symbols. But then you also, I think by the 11th or 12th century, now people are tying their identity a little bit more to it, but also now cities are starting to have their own flags. So especially, like I said, with ships, now you're going to dock at a port, especially, we'll say, on the Italian peninsula in the Mediterranean, because before Italy was unified, there was a bunch of little city-states. And we'll use Genoa as an example. Genoa was the first place on the Mediterranean to really have its own, city flag, in a sense. So when you're docking your ships, now you know who you're trading with. You know where you are. There's a marker that, hey, I see this flag. This is, let's say, in Northern Europe. This is Bremen in Germany. This is Saxony. This is Tallinn in Estonia. These are, like, I am where I'm supposed to be. These are the people I'm trading with. So now you have city signifiers, and, we mentioned that flags especially had a royal connotation. But if we fast forward, let's say, to the 1700s and then the 1800s, we have two big revolutions that actually changed flags. And that was the French Revolution and the American Revolution, actually. So the French tricolor, that's blue, white, and red, that was a symbol of being a republic, as opposed to a kingdom, where French symbols included the fleur-de-lis, those little flowers with the three prongs on it. So now flags are becoming a little more simple. Some symbols included like animals or religious symbols, but now some of these are being associated with royalty. So now we're drifting away from that for more republicanism. And, also a larger part of the age of exploration, age of colonization, and you mentioned earlier of sticking your flag in the ground. Now these new republics are also, spreading these ideals and adding their flag. And one of their big moments is having these symbols on ships. Ships basically created the modern understanding or modern look of flags that we know, that rectangular shape where you see that, this is, the Spanish Empire, this is Portugal. So ships had a lot to do with the development of flags.
It's interesting, though. It makes sense, because all through history, we talked about this last episode. Remember when you were traveling and they were actually African heritage and race up in, you said Bolivia, was it? Up north? It's the northern...
Like indigenous flags you're talking about?
No. Like actually indigenous. You said that there was African race people, right? Up north, northeastern Europe, when you were in one country. I remember that specifically. And I said, oh my God. And you said, yeah, because of the slave trades, or was it Malaysia? I don't even remember. Anywho, what I'm trying to make the point is trade, right? The trade routes. I'll give you a big example. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, before he settled down and before he met his first wife Khadija, he was a tradesman, right? So he had the Tariq al-Sham, right? And into Asia, and that's where he traded. So he spent 20 years on the road before his prophecy, right? Yeah. Now, think about that. The influence he got, he met Buddhist monks, That's what I learned in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you guys learn all that stuff.
Sure.
And remember, my Islamic teaching in Saudi Arabia was very intense. We had 7 classes of Islam religion a day. Or a week, sorry. And we had 7 classes of Arabic a week, plus science, math, algebra, Quran, writing. It was insane.
Yeah.
So we learned that his lifetime he spent a lot of time in Asia. So he mingled with Buddhist monks. He mingled with Christian monks, like in their monastery. You know, he'll stop to rest. There were like basically rest stops or rest stations, and he will actually talk to them, live with them for days, weeks. He will trade, goes back to Mecca, goes back out there. He went, up through, like I say, Sham, which is Levantine, into Asia. He went to India, and they said he actually went as far as what we call modern Russia and back, because he just traveled 20 years because he couldn't stand staying in Mecca, because since he was young, about 16, 17 years old, when he was learning the trade from his uncle and from his grandfather, he was always like, the whole idol worshipping, sacrificing, virgins, sacrificing animals inside the Kaaba. That's what they used to do. That's why he went back and he washed the inside of Kaaba and he took it back. He was like, this is crazy. He was against gambling. He was against alcohol. He was against slavery. So that's why he traveled so much, because he couldn't stand being in Mecca. But what that did, it just opened his eyes. And I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to do that in order to mature to receive his prophecy. My point is, trade, right? It brings that ideation, right? You exchange ideas, you discover different mindsets. Going back to the flag point, flags is the symbol of friend or foe, right? Because you talked about the ports, right? So I wonder if Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, I'm not trying to be religious here, he had some kind of identification as a tradesman. Like because Quraysh was a lot of tribes, right? So I wonder if Quraysh had banners. Every tribe had a banner, right? His Abi Talib had a banner. Hamza had a banner. Ali had a banner, because they all different basically tribes, different families. So how somebody like him, I always wonder, maybe that'll be another episode, somebody for him to travel across, he's nobody. Nobody knows him in Asia. Nobody knows him in India, to say, well, is he a friend or he's a foe? Who does he belong to? So that alone, trade, going back to my point, trade, as the ship is docking, or you are on camelback or horseback, traveling through earth for trade, it makes sense. You have to, it's almost it's like flags where your ID, like your license, your ID, your permission to say, okay, you can come into this country. You're not going to cause problems because I know you belong to that tribe. I know you belong to that city. Because like you said, even Italy was divided. It was unified, I think, way later. I'm not sure what.
Like 1800s,
Yeah, it was crazy. So Florence was a country, Venice was a country, Rome was a country, Milan was a country, Genoa was its own country. So I think there were 6 or 10 countries in one country before they got unified. And that's why they were fighting. Like, if probably about the Medici, they're constantly fighting with Rome and the Vatican. But my point is, we forget that the human mind saw an importance or necessity to create that identity. And because who are you? How can I trust you? There was no phones, there was no technology, there were writings, but there was the symbol, because not everybody read and wrote. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, he was illiterate, right? So symbolic belonging or symbolic identity with flags was really important as a protection method, as a tool, like I said, to differentiate who your friend or your foe, whether you are okay to trade with that person, are you okay to shake hands and be a partner, give their money, give their land, trade, even just exchange ideas too. Can I trust you? That's what the flag was saying. Do you agree
Yeah.
with me?
I definitely follow. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's probably,
Honestly.
you're like, Dr. Slava, it's really interesting. Get used to it. I'm the kind of person that, trying to put a spin on things, because again, our series is all about mastering an unlimited mindset. And that's what I want our audience to open your mind and look at things differently. And you're going to see absolutely beautiful, beautiful things. Now, that brings me to my next question. What makes a flag design successful historically? Because through history, as you know, some countries, some empires, many kingdoms, many, regal governments, they were a lot more successful. Of course, there's so many different reasons, but they were a lot more successful than others. And they stayed on, like the Islamic Empire just in Europe, but all the way towards Spain, with 800 years. Yeah. Islamic Empire ruled Greece. The Ottoman Empire, the Turks, ruled Greece for 500 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that must be that pledging the allegiance to somebody to keep control for 500 years or 800 years. It must be impactful. So what makes it more successful than others in your opinion?
So I think in terms of let's say what makes something impactful, and I think this could be good or bad. If we're saying from the empire end, let's say, so for example, the Ottoman Empire example that you said, and I'll use their control over Eastern Europe. So you have areas that are not, they were part of Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire, which at that point the Ottomans ended, basically, when they conquered Constantinople, later Istanbul. So I think it's it is part of it is domination. So these are areas that maybe they were part of the Greek sphere and religiously the Orthodox sphere. And now when you have this new power taking over, it's like, oh, well, I guess I should probably follow along or listen, whether it benefits me. And for some people, let's say Slavic peoples in Bosnia, many actually converted to Islam. That's why many Bosniaks, many are Muslim, because maybe when they practiced Christianity, they practiced it in a way that the Pope or some of the archbishops did not agree with, like praying in your home versus praying at a church. And since many were poor farmers, they thought, oh, maybe conversion will ascend me to, going from nothing to, oh, now I can own this, or I can have some sort of level. So that could be one end where, some benefit, but then for those that want to hold on to an identity, will use, their cousins, the Serbians, who are also Slavic peoples, but follow Orthodoxy. For them, living under that rule was very difficult, because they felt, oh, I don't want to give this up, but it's very difficult. So it's when you're under a large banner, you kind of know your place. So it's either I kind of follow along and try to adjust, or if I really try to preserve what I have, then I have to kind of go against this. And this is where, nationalisms develop, and with new ideas, you also, like we mentioned, from royalty to republicanism, you get a new symbol to show that, which is, in most cases, a flag. I hope that answered your question. I went like a lot of places.
No. That's why we're here. We wanted to, and it's, I don't think it's fair to say that we're going to cover everything today, because you can go down so many rabbit holes, and I hope you come back to finish the discussion. Yeah, we're going to need probably more than one episode. But so we tapped into identity. We tapped into how flag is a symbol of communication, symbol of relationship, leadership, pledging allegiance to who are you. And that's what, it's basically like voting, you know what I'm saying? But without the modern system of voting. But what's interesting, you said that, the French flag, the red, white, and blue, it's the symbol of the republic against the French monarchs.
Yes.
United States has the same color too, because they're against, the colonialism, not colonialism, but against the King George.
British monarchy, yeah.
British monarchy, right. But the Union Jack is red, white, and blue. And that is a constitutional monarchy still. So that's interesting. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so I think red, white, and blue has generally been associated with in our modern understanding with Western hemisphere, we could say Western ideals. But what's interesting, at least with the Union Jack, at least, is we're going to tie the religious aspect to it. The Union Jack is made up of 3 crosses, pretty much. The Union Jack, or before it was 3, it was 2, and that included the St. George's Cross, which is, like it looks like a T-shaped cross. And that's the flag of England, which is white with a red cross through. But then the second iconic one, and this is the flag of Great Britain, which includes England and Scotland. And that was the St. Andrew's Cross, which is more like an X. And actually, one of the oldest flags continuously in use is actually the Scottish flag, from I think that design of the St. Andrew's Cross to represent Scotland and later Scottish identity. It goes back to around the 1100s. And so that Union Jack, it has religious connotation, but it's also a symbol of its links. What is under this union, which includes now England, Scotland, Wales, and now Northern Ireland. And it's interesting, another branch off, I will say, for the religious connotation is actually the oldest continuously used flag for a state, for an actual full-on country, is Denmark, actually. They call that design the Dannebrog, and it has a legend behind it that when the Danish were fighting the Estonians, that they were losing this battle, and again, it sounds very biblical, but a banner fell from the sky, from the heavens, and it was a white banner soaked in their blood, and it had a cross. And so that flag, the current Danish flag, is the oldest continuously used flag for like a modern country that we can think of. It's Denmark, actually. I think I kind of wanted to circle back to your other question of what makes a flag iconic. It's now, in a simple sense, it could be simple colors, but something like a design that really speaks out. Something that when you see it, you think that's the one. And the Union Jack is a very iconic flag. But I would say, let's say the Lebanese flag with the cedar tree, that when you see it compared to maybe the other flags of the Arab countries, especially in the Arab League, they don't use the Pan-Arab colors. They use a symbol related to land of the cedar tree. The cedar tree was generally a symbol for the Maronite Christian community of Mount Lebanon. But later, with the modern day, after the 1920s and later independence in the 40s, it became the symbol of Lebanon, of its many different groups who, even if they're not Maronite Christian, they wave that flag proudly, or they use the emoji, let's say. So having an iconic symbol that's like when you see it, that makes a good flag. So having maybe simple colors, an iconic design, and one other concept they mention is something that a kid can draw. Yeah.
It makes sense though, because it's an easy, that's smart, because it's easy to teach. But the whole banner falling from the sky, my fear is aliens.
Yeah. And by the way, Denmark's not the only country that has a story like that of some symbol falling from the sky.
It's a sign. It's a sign.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So in your opinion, or this is actually a fact, that the Danish flag is the oldest continuous design.
Yes, the oldest continuously used country flag for one place is Denmark. But if you want to talk about a design for a place Scotland is considered like a country, not like a full-on state, because they're under the UK sovereignty. Then the St. Andrew's Cross to represent Scotland is maybe like a century older, but we're going to say for like a state, an actual state government, nation state of the Danish people in Denmark, that is the oldest continuously used design, because it's about 700 years old, that the Danish still used for 700 years.
Well, I'm surprised, because I thought it would be the Dutch, because the Dutch were brutal.
Yeah.
Colonial force, they're the one who introduced slavery to the world.
I'll add to that. The Dutch flag is interesting because not only were there flags for the country, and I mentioned the ships, but there were flags for companies. And the biggest, most profitable company in existence was the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC is their abbreviation in Dutch. And that was the company that did a lot of the Dutch colonization, especially in Indonesia, where it was orange, white, and blue, before later on the Dutch switched the orange to red. So even in the Netherlands, waving Dutch flags, it has different connotations. If you wave the orange, white, and blue flag, it's a testament to the peak of the Dutch Empire, let's say, while the red, white, blue is more modern Netherlands, maybe less, I guess you could say, aggressive sign. But that old Dutch flag of the orange, white, and blue was really enveloped by the Dutch East India Company, which again, that was the most profitable company like in history, whether it was slavery or extraction of resources versus extraction of people.
That's great. Do you know what? Because I read, speaking of orange, it's my favorite color, by the way. It is. But do you know what was the king? William of Orange? Is it?
William of Orange, yes.
Why orange? I tried to research that. There is no origin. Nobody knows why he was named that way. Do you have a theory?
That's a tough one. Even when I've tried to research it, it was a little bit tough. But I just know that orange is very significant in the Netherlands. Even if you see their football team, like in the World Cup, their uniforms are orange.
Yeah,
so it's very significant.
That is interesting. Now, going back to the red, white, and blue, it's the republic, basically, the rebel, the rebellions. Why do you think United States, after everything they had between them and England, to keep those three colors? Does the red, I think, according to France, I forgot what it meant. I think because of the French Revolution, the red means something, the white means something, and the blue means something. Is that correct?
Yes. So generally and I'm saying like all world flags, generally red symbolizes blood of those who fight for the country, the bloodshed for independence, bloodshed for freedom. That's generally what it would mean, or it could be pride, and pride in your blood. White a lot of times can symbolize liberty. And actually, another design for liberty is a 5-pointed star. So stars, you're starting to see a lot more places use stars in their design. 5-pointed stars, that's a symbol of liberty as well. Now blue, I forget what exactly it was for the U.S. Stake, but blue in a lot of flags, especially Latin America, especially Central America, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, usually represents the bodies of water. So in that region, let's say in Central America, one stripe could be the Pacific Ocean, the coast that they have on the Pacific Ocean. The other could be the Caribbean Sea. So, blue is very significant, especially with water.
That's interesting because during the French royalty, blue was used a lot in their clothing, in their decor. Their china was blue because they believed that the royal family are so holy. They actually dressed them up like angels. That's why they had the white wigs, the powdered white wigs. Wow. To look like the clouds because they're heavenly, they're so divine and they're holy. And even their children, as young as the moment they start walking, the royal children, they'll put that white powder wig on because they are the holy, right, family, basically. Because when you belong in heaven, what's heaven? You're the sky. You have the white cloud and the blue sky. So they wore a lot of blue in Versailles, and they dressed their furniture. I don't know if you've been to Versailles, France, but Versailles had a lot of blue furniture, gold and white, because that's, the gold is the gold ring of an angel, and then you have the angel wings, and then the flying in the sky, basically. And even their mosaic, their ceilings are constantly painted with like heavenly scenes, right? God or angels. Like if you go into a lot of the old European, especially in France, the old palaces, when you look at the sky, even the ceilings and even their wallpaper, there's a lot of angels. There's a lot of sky imaging, because they were just so holy and above and beyond. They're the closest thing under God, basically. And that's interesting. But blue, you're saying in other flags, symbolizes water. Right. Yeah. So it's the coast and water. So that's the opposite. Now, going back to Lebanon, just for our viewers and our audience to understand, Maronites are Catholic Christians, right? Yeah. In Lebanon. Okay. So it's interesting how they chose the tree, right? Shajarat al-Arz, instead of a symbol of Christianity, which is a cross. Right. So they felt like they are more connected to the land more than anything else. Yeah. Because, go ahead.
Especially being on Mount Lebanon. Mount Lebanon, before our regular idea of Lebanon, using Lebanon, the word Lebanon usually meant Mount Lebanon. And then by the 20s of the French Mandate, when they cut, the borders of Syria, Lebanon, and they were going to do more even within Syria, basically the Mount Lebanon region was married to the coast. It was like the Jabal, the mountain of Lebanon, Mount Lebanon, was married to Beirut. And that was put together as the new greater Lebanon before its independence in the 40s as the Lebanese Republic.
I see. So that's why when I started this episode talking about borders, talking about, I think we said that in the last episode. Remember, I said when we traveled from northern Austria, south of Austria into northern Italy, how they changed the borders after the World War II. Now, Palestine. Can you share with our audience the significance of the Palestinian flag colors?
Yeah, so Palestine, along with a few of the other Arab nations, the colors, those colors, the black, red, white, and green, are known as the Pan-Arab colors. Now, this design, especially with the triangle, was popularized by the Arab Revolt under the rule of the Sharif of Mecca, and with against the Ottoman Empire to, with the promise by the British that they'll be granted a independent Arab kingdom if he helps them. Didn't happen. But the thing is with the Pan-Arab colors, and that's what we have to understand first, is before 1916 or 1917, when those colors were fully established on one flag, during the Ottoman Empire, there were young Arab societies, like at the Al-Fatat Society, of course, young Arabs. There were nationalist groups in a sense, and the thing is, many of the Arab provinces of the Ottoman Empire, it wasn't necessarily that they wanted independence at first, and we're talking 1800s to World War One. It's not necessarily they wanted independence, but they wanted more autonomy, because by this point, the Ottoman constitution changed. There was a Young Turk revolution, and it seemed like the Turkish language and the power of Istanbul was going to overshadow what was left of the empire, which was the Arab provinces. The Ottoman Empire lost North Africa, they lost Eastern Europe, and what was maintained, which was the Arab provinces in Bilad al-Sham, Hijaz region, and Mesopotamia. Now these guys are under a lot more pressure. They don't have as much representation. So, it started of Arabs wanting autonomy, but later on, ideas of independence when we get to the 1900s. And this organization, they used a flag that was three bands. It was green, white, and black. And the thing is, these represented the early caliphates and their banners. Which the green was the Fatimid Caliphate, which rose from Tunisia and made Cairo its capital. The Umayyad Caliphate with the white, which had Damascus as its capital, and the Abbasid Caliphate with the black color, with Baghdad as its capital. So it was kind of paying homage to these great cities of, the period of Arab rule, but also Islamic rule, because the rule of Islam shifted from mainly Arab to, after the Crusades, mainly either Circassian, Caucasian, and later Turkic as well. So those designs came about. And so when all these borders were drawn, this idea of a united Arab Kingdom was lost on them, but the colors of the flag still remained. And so the new mandates that were created, this includes Iraq, which was also a Hashemite kingdom similar to Jordan. Their flag, instead of a red triangle, had a red trapezoid and 2 stars, like the Jordanian star. The new Emirate of Transjordan, they would put a star on theirs. Now, Palestine, they mainly stuck with the one without a star, and this is around the 1920s. So it wasn't that it was the official flag of Palestine yet, but Palestinians, when they were using flags, they used that design that we see today. And so there's actually a famous picture of the Al Hamra cinema in Jaffa in the 30s, I believe, and you can see the top of the cinema had a flag that looks like the Palestinian flag, like no stars, just straight up. And it was more, and also there actually used to be flag proposals for Palestine in 1929 that, to counter the Zionist movement, which used exclusively Jewish symbols. Palestinian Arab movement kind of combined Islamic and Christian symbols, kind of to counter the Zionist movement, but also the British, because these Arab flags in Palestine were not allowed to be used during the British Mandate period. The only flags that could be waved was the British Union Jack and the Zionist movement flags that they had at the time. So in old encyclopedias, you can find like this French Le Petit Journal. When they have a flag of Palestine, it shows the Jewish Agency's flag, because the representation Palestine got on the world stage before 1948 was by the Jewish Agency, by David Ben-Gurion. So this attachment to that Arab flag became something different, especially in the 1960s with Palestinian resistance movement. And later in 1967, when Israel occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, the lifting of that flag was banned. And so Palestinians started to use the watermelon as a symbol because they have the same colors. So flags, at some point they were a unifying factor of multiple groups, but slowly with time and modern nationalism and different experiences people have, soon that symbol that was maybe wider became a little bit smaller. And while many Arab countries have those colors, it meant something different. It meant a symbol of resistance later on. Similar to, like, let's say how we have a kufiya. Many countries had it, but it means something different in the connotation, in the context of Palestine.
So going back, you said that it was the green, white, and black. When did they add the red? Do we know the timeline?
The red, so before during the Arab Revolt, actually, what the Hashemites used as a symbol, if they had a banner, was a red banner, actually. And I believe it had the Shahada on it, similar to a lot of Islamic-related flags, being custodians of Mecca and Medina. And so the red was added around 1917 to an already design that existed with the Al-Fatat Young Arab Society in 1914. So they already had the bars of green, white, and black. And they had some, talks with, the Hijaz region, Sharif of Mecca. But those guys weren't as involved, I guess, as the Sharif of Mecca. So it's hard to say whether, it was the British that added it, but the design without the triangle already existed a few years before. But I believe the triangle was just added during that time of the revolt, because a flag has to symbolize something. A flag has to create a unity in some way.
And this is fascinating because it's all about identity, right? So here we are, we're immigrants. And by the way, we got to do an episode about fashion, especially the kufiya, what it means. And from your travel, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm sure you've seen certain fashion items that, in certain countries, they are being worn everywhere. Of course, we'll start with the kufiya first, but that's another episode. But to live under, we pledge allegiance, we're American citizens, right? The American flag, right? We pledge an American flag, but in our hearts, it's, for me, it's the really Palestinian flag. My Jordanian friends are going to be upset more than the Jordanian flag. I think because of my dad, but that's how I identify myself, even in social media. I'll say, Jordan flag plus Palestine flag, because that's my blood, me, right? So, and that's when you talked about, the red being the, your honor, your pride. That's, what you believe, who you are. Yeah. And it's just fascinating how we are, attached to that, because no matter where we are, no matter how we displace ourselves, no matter how far we are, we want that feeling of belonging, right? So, but I don't think we'll have time today to go into, like, as an immigrant, how does it feel as identity? And I think that, under two different flags. Like I said, the practical flag where we live, but in our hearts, we're constantly, we're proud of our own flags too. So, but we have reached the end of our hour. Haitham, do you have any, I know, what's the best source for anybody that's interested in that kind of thing, like flag, identity, design, history? Is it just all over the place, so they can find a lot of the information on your TikTok account like last time?
Yeah. So, one good website I would check out, and it's not just any website. This is really a big flag encyclopedia website that's been around for a while. It's CRW Flags Inc. And they go through historic flags. They go through sometimes the person that designed it, what year, if there was a shade that was altered on a flag, which some flags have altered their shades, like Honduras went from dark blue to like cyan, which is a very light, pops out blue. They'll go through that as well. Alternative flags. Some countries actually have more than one flag that they raise at the same time. So CRW Flags is a good source that I would check out. It's very helpful. And thing is with vexillology, one note I wanted to say is it's not something you major in school. You pick it up as you go. It's something anybody can get into. You don't need a degree for this because there is no degree for it. So you just studying, you can become a expert, in your own right. So I recommend CRW Flags. Great source, great place to check out. If I have I have flag related playlists of both flag designs and flag history, and flag meanings of designs on my TikTok at Haithoomi, HAITHOOOMI. So that's another great place. I have the playlists organized, so if you guys want to look into flags, that's there too.
That is awesome. And here we are. We have a live example of all people, Palestinian American, that is an expert flag. So if you guys want to be an expert, you can do it, because you just witnessed a whole hour and we haven't even scratched the surface. I would love to revisit, because like I said, I have gazillion questions. But remember, these episodes are uploaded weekly on Spotify and Apple by the Mindset Mastery Moments, and you can watch them on YouTube. Please like, share, and hit the notification bell. That way you guys won't miss any episodes. If you like our content, please support us. When people got together, crossroads, and sitting around in front of our phone cameras telling our stories. So I hope to see you next time. This is Slava, the Jordanian.